Hey folks, with the 315 wipe you're going to get reset to a fresh state where you'll restart the game with only the things that you've pledged money for, or that have been awarded to you through your RSI account. This means you'll lose all Alpha UEC, reputation, ships, ship components, consumables, and FPS weapons and armor unless they appear in your RSI account. I'll include this link in the description so you can check what you'll start with. You'll likely be starting with only a paltry amount of Alpha UEC and your pledged ships, which probably come with a suboptimal loadout for bounty hunting. Fortunately, pretty much any ship with guns can complete NPC bounties, so get in your favorite ship, grab those bounty certification missions, and get to either Crusader or Hurston to start earning some money. Afterwards, you can start upgrading your ship's fit, which will probably give you a considerable boost to your combat effectiveness. There's timestamps in the video description if you want to skip ahead to what's most relevant for you. Since our focus is going to be on efficiently completing NPC bounties for money, I recommend using laser weapon loadouts. We're not using ballistics because they don't have enough ammo for chaining lots of bounties, and we're not using distortion weapons because they don't help you kill bounties faster than lasers. Distortion weapons help you take down the enemy shield quicker, but they don't do any hull damage, and they share capacitor with your laser weapons, so having them turned on will make the ammo pool of your other laser weapons lower, since the ship's capacitor is shared across all pilot-controlled energy weapons. Scatter guns can be fun, but they aren't great for quickly killing more agile targets, so we end up with either laser cannons or laser repeaters. For 315, all laser cannons and laser repeaters with the same size are almost exactly the same. The primary exception to this rule is that the FL series laser cannons don't have any weapon spread, whereas all the other laser cannons do. So for size 1 through 3, the FL series laser cannons are what I recommend. For size 4, you can't get the FL series cannons, so I'd recommend either Omniskies or M6As, which are exactly the same except for a 2k price difference. And for size 5, I recommend buying Omniskies because they're the cheapest by a decent margin. For laser repeaters, it's much simpler. Just go with the CF series from size 1 through size 4 because they're the cheapest and the damage stats are the same. There's no reason to go with anything else unless you've already owned them and it saves you a purchase. For size 5, I'd say just don't get repeaters. Cannons do 73% more damage than repeaters, and the range and projectile speeds are equal, so there's no reason to buy size 5 repeaters. Size 1 through size 4 laser cannons and repeaters do about the same DPS while firing, but laser cannons are much more capacitor efficient, so they'll fire for longer before needing to recharge ammo. So if you can land your shots, laser cannons will do up to 30% more sustained damage than repeaters. But combat can be hectic, especially if you're in a 1v3 bounty situation, where you're making a lot of evasive maneuvers while also trying to line up your shots. Because of that, I actually prefer repeaters to make it easier to get from acquiring my target to landing my shots, since repeaters, with their faster projectile speeds, need less correction for your target's movement. Repeaters also have 25% more range at 1540 meters versus the 1225 meters of cannons. But honestly, I think both are viable, and you can use either as long as you can land the cannon shots. I don't recommend mixing cannons and repeaters because they have different projectile speeds, so you end up needing to lead your shots different amounts to use your different weapons. I also personally don't recommend mixing ballistics in with your laser weapons since you put a limit on how many bounties you can complete before having to go back and rearm. But if you did want to, you do get the benefit of giving your remaining energy weapons more ammo and faster recharge. Ballistic and laser gatlings and repeaters all have the same projectile speed, and so do all ballistic and laser cannons, so those are the combos that would play together the best in my opinion. Just keep in mind that all ballistic repeaters only have 16 to 17 seconds of total firing time before they run out, and that all ballistic cannons only have 1 minute of firing time, so you really need to be disciplined with when you actually fire them. For missiles, in 315 stealth isn't effective anymore, so pretty much all ships have large EM signatures, so I recommend fitting EM missiles. I prefer size 1s to get more missiles and because they have the most flexible lock-on range and the fastest missile speed. So in 315, shields have received another pass which gave grade A shields more health and recharge rate than lower grade shields. They all still have the same 5-second damaged and down regen delay, which means they all need 5 seconds of not taking damage before they can start recharging. The main other thing to consider is physical damage absorption. Ballistic weapons have a unique property, which is that a percentage of their damage bypasses shields and does damage directly to the hull. That percentage is a property of the shield itself, and it's the same for all size 2 and size 3 shields. Thanks to Zimzafero and Cameral for pointing out that for size 1 shields, some of them have been updated with higher absorption percentages than the others in the 315 PTU. And the only grade A shield that has this is the Industrial grade A Palisade, so that's what I recommend using for size 1. For size 2 and size 3, all grade A shields are the same, so I recommend the civilian shields since they're the cheapest. In 315, power plants no longer give you a considerable signature reduction for going stealth like they did in 314, so now we just want to use whatever power plant will fully power our ship. For most ships, that's going to be the default power plant. Keep in mind that Urkel doesn't add in the power required to actually spool your quantum drive, so if you're trying to get out of a combat situation where your shields are charging, you're maneuvering, and you're spooling your quantum drive all at once, you may need more power than Urkel shows. If you need to upgrade your power plant, I recommend the Military JS series due to its short power draw request time, which is how long it takes the plant to produce its advertised power. This is important for things like coming back after being EMP'd, but I wouldn't upgrade unless you just don't produce enough power with your default power plant. It's just not worth the money spent. For coolers, don't upgrade your coolers. It's as simple as that. In 315, the cooler components will never be what prevents your ship from overheating, because the ship chassis itself has a max cooling throughput, and that's almost always the limiting factor. For quantum drives, I say get a quantum drive that will get you around the verse in one tank. This is important in 315 because of the changes that made ship components accessible only where you bought them, so you need to actually take your ship to the component store. There are a few ways to do this, and I won't get into all the different ways you can do that here, but I think the point remains. So for size 1, I recommend either the Civilian Atlas or Voyage for their combination of fuel economy and speed. For any ships that can fit a size 2 drive, they'll have enough quantum fuel to go anywhere in Stanton, so I'd recommend fitting the fastest drive, which is the Military XL1, if you don't already have a comparable military drive equipped by default. NPC bounty missions currently exist in Crusader and Hurston space. Both have advantages and disadvantages, and they have different tiers of reputation for bonuses to bounty payouts. For this reason, it'd be most profitable to focus primarily on one space so that you can build your reputation with them and get up to the 20% additional pay for the different types of bounties. I prefer Crusader space because I find the asteroids in that space easier to avoid during combat than the random space debris that you'll encounter in Hurston space, and because the bounties in Crusader space are mostly spawned around a single moon, whereas they're pretty evenly split across all the moons in Hurston. As you'll successfully complete more and more bounty missions, you'll earn more reputation with the Bounty Hunting Guild, and as you work your way up the ranks, you'll get certification missions to unlock higher difficulty bounties, starting at very low risk targets going all the way up to extreme risk targets. Generally, it's most profitable to just run the very high risk targets, or VHRTs, back to back if your goal is to make money as quickly as possible, and only kill the named target and ignore the wingmen before warping out, so that's what I would recommend. As you enter a bounty mission, speed towards your target at a high speed, and then start slowing down when you're about 10k away, depending on the ship that you're flying. Your goal is to hit your SCM speed right as you enter the max range of your weapons. So fly decoupled towards the target, but at an off angle so you're not just trading blows directly back and forth unless you're in a large gunship and you out DPS them, or you have more shields like a Connie. Focus primarily on the named target so that if things go south and you die, hopefully you've at least completed the mission objective. To evade incoming fire, keep flying decoupled so you're always a moving target even when you've got a shot lined up, but try to be aware of the direction that you're going in so you don't end up hitting an asteroid. When closing the gap to your target, you can perform a corkscrew maneuver by upstrafing and rolling your ship so that you trace the path of a corkscrew. This makes you harder to track and hit and lets you shake off a lot of incoming fire. If you have missiles incoming, pop off 2 decoys as soon as possible to send it away from you. For some larger ships, you'll need to pop off a third decoy if the missile icon is still there after the first two. You'll want your capacitor set to full weapons until your shield gets low, and at that point you want to find a window to put power to shields to recharge them. You need to not be hit for 5 seconds for your shields to start recharging, so you'll want to put your power to shields after those 5 seconds have elapsed. Once recharging, it takes 3 seconds for a size 1 shield and 12.5 seconds for a size 2 shield to get back to full. If you've timed it well, hopefully you're still firing your guns while your shields are recharging because you stockpiled some ammo before going max power to shields. I didn't always used to do this as a keyboard and mouse user, but this type of in-combat power management makes a huge difference to your combat effectiveness, so I highly recommend it. To make it faster, I'd recommend just binding the max capacitor buttons so you only have to tap on a single key once during combat to adjust your power settings. Another thing is to boost during turns. Using your afterburners while turning will help you turn faster, which is really useful for reacquiring a target that you accidentally let get behind you or for avoiding an obstacle that you see at the last second. This is even more helpful when you're in a larger ship trying to track something a bit smaller. Also, your ship's bottom and rear thrusters are strongest, so angle yourself to take advantage of those for arresting or increasing your movement. You can also use this to help you avoid jousting by pitching your ship in advance to the direction the enemy is flying, and scrubbing off most of your speed while your ship is facing its lower thrusters in the direction you are traveling. The last thing I'll mention is using the lag pip instead of the lead pip. There are 2 different ways of targeting your fire. The lead pip is what is in the game by default, and it shows you where to point your ship so that your shots will land on the enemy that's targeted. Lag pip instead shows you where your shots are going to land. So you target the enemy ship and you move the nose of your ship ahead of them so that you place the targeting indicator on top of the enemy ship. I found that I prefer the lag pip over the lead pip lately to help me gauge when I might still be able to hit the edge of an enemy, whereas lead pip will only really turn green when you're effectively aiming for center mass. Well, that's all folks. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments about my recommendations or my tips. I hope that you've liked this video. Cheers.